Good morning, friends. So today I'm going to read you a story called A Day's Work. In this story, there is a little boy named Francisco, and his grandfather, who he calls Abuelo, which is a Spanish name for grandfather, comes back to America from Mexico. So as we read this book, and we're going to take 2 days to dig into it, we're going to really think about the characters and the setting. So you have this paper right here. You should have printed this out, and I want you to glue it in your reader's notebook. So if you want to stop and do that now, go ahead and pause the video. I have the whole anchor chart pretty much the same on a big piece of paper. So in stories, the author shows us a lot about the character through their actions, their interactions with each other, and the setting around them. So we're going to spend 2 days to kind of dig into this story and see how what we can learn about the characters through their interactions and their the setting. So the setting, let's dig into that real quick, can reveal a lot about a character. So as we're reading today, we're going to kind of talk about and think about the setting. And we're going to ask, what do we learn through this setting? What do we learn about Francisco and Abuelo through this setting? Okay? And then we're also going to think about how the author uses words to describe the character. So as we're reading, we're going to stop and we're going to come up with some conclusions that we can but that we can come up with about the character. The way the author describes the character, what can we come up with? Okay? So you should have this cut and glued in your reader's notebook. You should also have a blank page right next to it. On that blank page, I just want you to split. You don't have to write all this. I just want you to split your paper so that you have 4 chunks. And you can go ahead and write setting, because we're going to dig into the setting. So you can go ahead and write setting. And then author uses words to describe character. We can just put describe character. All right? So as we're reading, we're going to ask ourselves, what do we learn through the setting? And what conclusions can you draw using the author's description today? All right? All right, here we go. Francisco stood in the parking lot with his grandfather and the other men. It was the first time he'd been there. A truck cruised along slow. The driver held up 3 fingers. Bricklaying, I need 3 men, he called. 5 men jumped in the back. Only 3, the driver said, and 2 had to get out. The workers left in the parking lot, grumbled and shuffled around. Oh, that's one of our words, shuffled. Francisco's grandfather shivered. Hace frio, he said. It is cold because it's still early. It'll be hot later. You will see, Francisco said in Spanish. Why did you bring a kid? One of the men asked. No one will hire you with a kid. He belongs in school. It's Saturday, Francisco said. My abuelo, my grandfather, does not speak English yet. He came to California only 2 days ago to live with my mother and me. Francisco swallowed. We've been alone since my father died. I'm going to help my abuelo get work. He took his grandfather's cold, rough hand and smiled at him. Abuelo was tall and skinny as an old tree. Francisco loved him. When there was money to spare, they'd get him a jacket like Francisco's with long sleeves, long enough to cover his hands, and an LA Lakers cap like Francisco's too. All right, so we're stopping and thinking about this setting. Do we know much about this setting yet? where did this story take place? The story takes place in California, and we can kind of learn just from these couple pages that in this time in California and with this group of people that live, they're trying to find work, right? So these people, how would you describe them? If they're out hunting for work, are they lazy? No. The people in this story that live in this part of California, they're very hardworking. Do you agree? And that kind of goes with describing the characters, but we'll dig into that in a second. So the setting can reveal a lot about a character. What do we learn through the setting? We're still kind of thinking, so you don't have to write anything yet. We'll go back and revisit it. But remember that there's hard workers that live in this part of California. And then what conclusions can we draw using the author's description? So already, I like Francisco. Do you? He seems like a really, really good grandson. Why do you think he's a good grandson? Well, it's Saturday. Most kids on Saturdays aren't trying to help their grandpa find work, are they? Most kids on Saturdays are out playing. But he loves his grandpa and he wants to help his grandpa find a job, right? So those are two things that we'll kind of store in our head, and we'll keep adding a little bit more, and we'll do it at the end, okay? A van was coming. Benjamin's gardening was printed on the side. Francisco let go of his grandfather's hand. He darted through the swarm of men and was right in front of the van when it stopped. "Oh, man," the driver said. "I just need one for gardening." He was young with a thick black mustache, and he was wearing an LA Lakers cap, like Francisco's, maybe cleaner. It must be an omen, Francisco thought. "Take us, Mr. Benjamin, us!" Francisco pointed back at his grandfather. He tilted his own cap over his eye. "Look, we love the Lakers too, and my grandfather is a fine gardener, though he doesn't know English yet. The gardens are the same, right? Mexican and American?" Francisco waved urgently. Let me see. For his grandfather to come. "Also, you will get 2 for 1, he said. "I don't charge for my work." All right, let's stop and think about that. What conclusion can you draw using the author's description? So let's think about Francisco. What are some words that could describe him? He's friendly, he's kind, and is he hardworking too? Sure. Okay, and we're still thinking about the setting, okay? All right, a couple more pages for today. The man grinned. "Okay, I'm convinced, but I'm not Mr. Benjamin. Call me Ben." He motioned to Francisco. "You and your grandfather jump in back. $60 for the day." Francisco nodded. His breath was coming fast. That much for a day's work? Mama would be so happy. Her job didn't pay much. There'd be extra food tonight, maybe chorizos. He pulled open the back door, threw in the bag of lunch Mama had packed, and hurried his grandfather into the van ahead of him. A big, tough guy tried to get in too. Francisco pushed him back. He was tough. He was a worker. "It is gardening," he told Abuelo as the van pulled away. "But I do not know gardening. I am a carpenter. I have always lived in the city." So this is grandfather saying this. It is easy, Francisco waved through the window of the passing car. Flowers, roses, things like that. He raised his cap to a lady in a car. Senora, he said politely, though she couldn't hear. Oh, is Francisco polite too? Might want to add that one. The van turned off the freeway onto a winding road and stopped. A sloping bank led up to the backyards of new houses. Some were not finished yet. Workers climbed high on rooftops, and there was the good smell of tar. The high bank was dotted with pretty white flowers and overgrown with coarse green spikes. 6 big black trash cans waited below. They all got out of the van, but Ben left the motor running. All right, so stop and think for a little bit. So they are going to do a job of gardening. Abuelo does not know anything about gardening. Was Francisco honest about that? No, he wasn't. I need you to weed this bank, he told Abuelo. Be sure to get the roots. He pointed to the cans. Dump them here. Good, fine. It was Francisco who answered. I have another job to go to, Ben said. I'll pick you up at 3. It'll be hot. Your grandfather will need a hat. He took a straw one from the van. Gracias, Abuelo said. See you guys then. Work hard and have a nice day. All right, we're going to read one more page and let's think about the setting here, okay? What did he say? Abuelo asked as the van drove off. He said to have a nice day. It is what everyone says up here. Your English is very good, my grandson, Abuelo said. Francisco nodded and smiled. He climbed the bank and hung his jacket on a railing. Now, he said, I will show you. He pulled up one of the spiky clumps and shook the dirt from its roots. These are weeds. Do not touch the flowers. His grandfather smiled. Bueno, Francisco could see his strong white teeth all the way to the back. All right, so let's think about the setting, but let's not write anything down because I like to wait until the end just in case. But what are we learning through the setting? That it requires hard work in this part of California, right? That you have to be a hard worker to be able to earn money in this part of California. Do we agree? All right, so we will read the rest tomorrow. We will dig in a little bit more to the setting and a couple of the other sections. So you didn't have to do a lot of writing today. You should have just written Francisco is friendly, kind, and hardworking. All right? So we will continue to dig into this tomorrow. Bye.